Every fan of a particular form of media has that one thing they love recommending to all their friends and family. That one particular book they adore. That one particular movie they consider a masterpiece. That one particular game they brand as a must-play. You just love that thing so much you want to share it with those you love. Even when they're being unreasonably stubborn and refuse to take your recommendations, which starts driving you absolutely mad because you don't know why they're refusing and you just want— To me, that thing is Capcom's Ace Attorney series. I adore these games, and I especially love the first 3 games in the series: Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Justice for All, and Trials and Tribulations. Almost everyone knows about Ace Attorney, whether it's because they played it themselves or they know someone who did. Even those who don't play video games are aware of this series because of the well-known sound clip. To those who don't know about it though, it is a perfect mixture of murder mysteries and courtroom drama. And although the overarching plot isn't great, the individual stories of each case are so well written, they almost make me forget all the anime fluff in them. Almost. However, as much as I love the stories, it's the gameplay that won me over. The games are excellent visual novel point-and-click adventure hybrids. And although they have your typical adventure puzzles where you use something on something then something happens, it's the courtroom mechanics that make them stand out. I love the courtroom gameplay so much. It's fun, it's challenging, and the games do a great job at making you feel smart for figuring stuff out with well-timed music cues and sound effects. If I haven't made myself clear yet, I love these games, and I think all adventure game developers need to learn a thing or two from them. I want to share my love for this series with all of you, and to do so, I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at the best entry in the series. Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, a game released in 2008 on PS2, PSP, and Wii, and was based on the Adult Swim show of the same name. It was developed by High Voltage Software and published by Capcom. If you've never heard of this show before, it's a parody of the 1960s Hanna-Barbera cartoon Birdman and the Galaxy Trio. The story revolves around Harvey Birdman, who left the hero business behind him to become a defense lawyer. Each episode sees the titular hero defending a well-known Hanna-Barbera character. The show was painfully funny and well written. It is without a doubt my favorite Adult Swim show, at least the first 2 seasons. Not so much the 3rd and 4th seasons. They're still good, just not as good as the first 2. Oh, we don't talk about that one. That one doesn't exist. Anyway, enough about the show. Let's talk about the game. Since the show is a spoof of courtroom dramas, it makes perfect sense to make the game a spoof of the Ace Attorney games, which, by the way, is absolute genius as far as video game ideas go. So, was the game true to the show? Or did it feel nothing like its source material? Was it a good game? Or were the developers relying too much on its status as a spoof to worry about making it actually fun? To answer these questions and more, let's dive right in. The game has no overarching plot, but is instead divided into 5 individual cases that play out almost exactly like a typical episode from the show.
This reality show thing is getting out of hand.
Yeah, Phil asked me to replace the Dijon in the break room with mustard gas.
Survival of the sexy! Ha ha!
So much so that whilst making this video, I kept forgetting whether a specific scene I was thinking of was from the game or the show.
I'm only going to say this once, so listen carefully. Please tell me what I need to do to defeat Birdman from 7 and 7-Eleven.
And that speaks a lot for the game's writing, because it's fantastic, and almost every joke landed perfectly.
Peter Potamus, you're under arrest for the arson of this guy's half a house.
Harvey, help me! I didn't do it! Well, I mean, if I was going out, so I'd throw your mailbox in and keep it going a bit longer for my s'mores, but I didn't start it!
All the characters are straight from the show, and they are just as hilarious.
So, the little doggy is an electrical mind taker, huh? Well, can you do this, you overgrown remote control? The fluorescents are now soft lights! Beat that, doggy!
However, some of the jokes rely a bit too much on the show, which is fine if you have watched it, but could be a bit alienating if you haven't.
You never admitted that to anyone before. And it's on record. Gigi, wife.
Not while I'm under oath, Harry.
This is more of a nitpick than a flaw, as it's just a couple of jokes, and the game does its best to fill you in on the character's history in their bios. Plus, if you happen to play the game before watching the show and you end up liking it, you'll probably want to watch the show. The humor and writing are that good.
We've been robbed!
You too?
No, we, as in the bird team!
Oh, yeah, right.
Have you
Honestly, sometimes while playing, I have to be reminded that I'm not watching the show.
7-letter word for long and hard. Starts with an A. Oh, what is this? I know this. What would be long and hard?
Oh, right. Not surprising, as the game was written by Meryl Hagan, who also worked on the show, and I think she did an excellent job here.
Harvey, what are you doing on that side?
Prosecuting, Your Honor. My office furniture has been stolen, and one of the two defendants is the guilty party.
Uh-huh, which one?
Is it okay to say, I'm not sure?
If you enjoyed the show and you miss it, you'll definitely enjoy this game, as it genuinely feels like 5 extra episodes that aren't this. Because as we agreed before, this doesn't exist. However, I do have 2 issues with the game's writing. First off, the parts where Harvey talks to himself during his investigations are a bit too cheesy. I know these lines had to be there to help the player understand what's going on, and you can't just have dry writing with zero comedy, but they still felt out of place, and the humor wasn't on par with the show's humor like the rest of the game is. And that's not even mentioning the grammatical errors. Second, the writing can be a bit lazy when pressing the witness. In the Ace Attorney games, you can press the witness on every line they speak, which sometimes gives you a clue as to what contradiction you can find in their testimony, and sometimes causes the witness to slip up and say something they didn't want to say. Most of the time though, pressing just gives you some extra exposition or a humorous response. In this game, however, 90% of the time when you press the witness, you get one of these 4 responses.
No, that's it? Nothing else? Yeah, nothing looks out of place here. Well, I guess that does make some sense.
Harvey, beware the mind taker.
I would beg to differ with this statement, but I think it sounds just fine.
I feel like this is a missed opportunity. If any Ace Attorney game needed more humorous responses when pressing the witness, you'd think it would be the one that's meant to be a spoof. Anyway, other than that, the writing is great and is more than enough to carry the game. And the fact that most voice actors from the show return to play their roles only makes this game that much more like the show.
Of course! So, for evidence, we've got a greasy bag/pair of boxers, a coffee cup, a set of keys, a stack of money, and a death ray console that runs on tubes. I'll round up the suspects and see you at the jail!
You, the object of my wrath.
Really don't have time for this now.
Even the ones that replaced Stephen Colbert did a good job at imitating his voices.
9 alligator, 10 alligator, ready or not, here I come. Ha ha ha! I wish.
But with the help of the latest in cloning technology, I've found an unending source of cheap recruits. Ha ha ha! Low, Dolly.
He's so perfectly miniature. I hate him. I love him. I hate him. I love him and hate him.
Interesting prospect. Joining forces, coming together, reducing the competition, giving everyone else the tiniest of chances.
The graphics of the game look exactly like the show. Most cartoon tie-ins back in the day were made with 3D graphics, resulting in them looking very different from the shows they're based on. So I'm really glad that this game didn't go down the same road. This makes the game feel so much more like an homage to the show rather than just a quick cash grab. I also loved how they used the show's jump cuts in the game. For example, moving from one area to another will play the car jump cut used in the show, and I thought that was pretty neat. Speaking of moving from one area to another, let's talk about the gameplay. Much like Ace Attorney, the game is divided into two main phases, first of which is the investigation phase. During this phase, you can talk to NPCs, search for clues, and occasionally solve inventory-based puzzles. The investigation phase is never challenging and is more for setting up the plot rather than for gameplay. I have an issue with this phase, and it's the same issue I had with the first Ace Attorney game. The investigation phase is boring gameplay-wise. None of the inventory-based puzzles are interesting, and in most cases, all you do is go from room to room talking to NPCs to see if there's something new to talk about. It's just busy work. If they're not gonna make this phase fun to play, at least make it an uninterrupted cartoon scene. This issue was slightly fixed in the second Ace Attorney game, since they included the Cyclock mechanic, which helps with breaking the monotony. But there's no such thing in this game. It does have parts where you're given a choice, but the choices you get are either a gag or a different cutscene that has no bearing on the case whatsoever.
Wait, there's a third suspect, X. Aren't you gonna question him? See what he knows?
X who?
The Eliminator, your arch nemesis. The guy in the magenta hood.
Not ringing a bell.
I've got 2 suspects right here. That's already 2 whole more people than I usually have.
And sometimes they unlock a secret cutscene that usually has something to do with Street Fighter.
I'm not getting caught up in your evil schemes.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Who said anything about evil? Did you hear him call us evil?
So is this an 888 or a 555?
Come to think of it, the game is full of Street Fighter references and Easter eggs. Here's hoping that Harvey Birdman will someday be an unlockable character in a future Street Fighter game. But I digress. Overall, the investigation phase in these games is not that great as far as gameplay goes. To be fair though, this game doesn't drag on as much as Ace Attorney does. When presenting the wrong clue to an NPC in Ace Attorney, you get a needlessly long dialogue box. In this game, on the other hand, all you get is this.
Nope.
However, whenever you pick up a new item, the game takes you to this menu. So I guess the dragging on balances out.
Sigh.
The second phase, which is where all the fun is at, is the courtroom phase. During this phase, you listen to the witnesses' testimony, then you try to find holes in their stories, either by pressing them or by presenting evidence that contradicts what they said. For example, in this part, Gigi is claiming that Peter Potamus set Harvey's house on fire at 11 p.m. and that as soon as she saw him doing that, she immediately called 911. However, her conversation with the 911 operator was at 12:30 a.m., 1 hour and 30 minutes after the fire supposedly started. This contradicts what she said. Once you present the right piece of evidence, more information is revealed, and sometimes new pieces of evidence are added to your inventory. But beware, because if you present the wrong piece of evidence, you lose gravitas points. These points act as your health, and if you lose all of them, it's game over and you'll have to reload from your last save. By the way, you can find some extra points during the investigation phase by uncovering specific secrets, which is pretty cool. With all honesty though, you will rarely need them, as the game is a bit too easy. If you're looking for a challenging game that has depth and requires a lot of critical thinking, you're probably not gonna find that here. This is as hard as these cross-examinations get. Still, at least the solutions are always logical, despite the game being a parody. However, I can't help but feel that I was playing more for the cutscenes rather than the gameplay. And I can't get over how competent Birdman is in this game. Sure, he's a moron in the cutscenes, and some of the choices you make will result in him saying something stupid.
My client is insane. This duck has no clue what day it is.
Heck, I'd bet my reputation he doesn't even know where he is right now.
I'm a killer.
See, he thinks he's a horse.
But when it comes to winning cases, he's killing it in this game. I'm not used to seeing Harry winning so many cases. This is kinda scary. Overall, I enjoyed the game, though I may have enjoyed it for the writing and humor rather than the gameplay. The game is a good spoof of Ace Attorney, but whilst playing it, I couldn't help but feel that I would rather be watching all of this as a special instead of playing it. So if I'm gonna be recommending it to anyone, I'd probably recommend it to fans of the show, who would like to watch 5 more episodes they've never seen before. If you want a good Ace Attorney-like game, I suggest you look elsewhere. I would highly recommend you give the Danganronpa series a try. Or you could play Aviary Attorney, which is a very well-made and humorous game inspired by the Ace Attorney series. I'm sure you'll find more enjoyment in those games than you would in Harvey Birdman Attorney at Law. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you liked it, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. Don't forget to hit the bell icon as well. And if you want to support this channel, you can do so on my Patreon page or on Ko-fi.com. I know this is meant to be an April Fool's video, but I do want to point out that all my thoughts on this game and on the Ace Attorney games were very genuine. I genuinely believe that the game's writing is as good as the show's. Sadly, as much as I enjoyed the writing and humor, I can't recommend this game as a substitute for the Ace Attorney series, especially since it's missing the most important part of those games, which is the incredibly hot sexual tension between Phoenix Wright and Miles Edgeworth.